안녕하십니까. 조선일보 경제부의 박사기자 방현철입니다. 오늘 방현철 박사의 머니머니에서 또 특별한 시간을 마련했는데요. 하워드막스 오크트리캐피털 회장의 인터뷰를 또 준비했습니다. 지난번 1부에서는 이 하워드막스 회장님의 가치 투자 사이클에 대한 얘기를 좀 해봤는데요. 이번 시간에는 테크 버블에 대한 견해를 좀 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 이 자리에는 이제 인터뷰를 진행한 조선일보 경제부의 김신영 금융팀장님 나오셨습니다. 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요. 조선일보 경제부 김신영입니다.
예, 지난 시간에 이제 하워드막스 회장님 일단 소개는 드렸는데요.
네네.
이 하워드막스의 이 투자 철학, 요건 좀 어떤 건지 이제 사람들이 좀 궁금해할 것 같아요. 이번
네.
시간에는 좀 그걸 좀 정리해서 좀 소개를 해주시죠.
네. 이 하워드막스 회장이 이제 설립하신 오크트리캐피털이 이렇게 성공적인 거는 뭔가 이분이 투자를 잘하는 것이겠죠. 그래서 이분의 투자 철학에 대해서 관심이 많으신데요. 본인이 공개적으로 그 홈페이지 등을 통해서 밝히는 투자 철학은 크게 6가지라고 합니다. 우선 리스크 관리가 최우선이다.
네.
라는 점이 있고요. 두 번째는 일관성이 중요하다.
네.
일관성은 아무리 많이 강조해도 부족하지 않다. 뭐 이런
네.
뜻이겠죠. 그다음에 이제 세 번째는 시장은 비효율적이다.
그러니까 비효율적인 뭐를 딱 캐치해가지고 거기서 돈을 버는.
그렇죠. 시장이 뭐 너무너무 효율적이라면 이렇게 먹잇감이 없다고 해야 되나요? 그럴 수 있겠죠. 근데 시장의 비효율성을 중요하게 생각한다.
네.
그다음에 전문화의 이점.
네.
그러니까 이제 주식 투자도 이렇게 뭐 장난으로 하는 것이 아니라 전문성이 있어야 된다라는
네.
것이 있고요. 그다음에 투자에 있어서 거시적 예측이 중요하지 않다. 보통 사람들이 뭐 이제 거시적인 수치를 보고서는
네.
투자 결정을 하는 경우가 많은데 이분이 생각하기엔 중요하지 않다.
그래서 자신이 거시경제 전문가는 아니라고 그렇게
그런
얘기도
말을
했었어요.
여러 차례 늘 그런 걸 강조를 하시고 저희한테도 얘기를 하셨었고요. 그다음에 이제 시점 잡기는 하지 않는다.
소위 마켓 타이밍.
마켓 타이밍 그렇죠. 저희가 오늘 살까, 내일 살까, 모레 살까 이렇게 좌고우면하는 경우가 많은데 이제 그런 것은 하시지 않는다라는 것이 원칙이라고
그러다
합니다.
보니까 되게 크게 좀 그림을 그리시고 크게 좀 시장을 보시는
맞습니다.
분입니다.
네네.
자, 그럼 지난 시간에 이어서 하워드막스 오크트리캐피털 회장의 인터뷰를 같이 보시도록 하겠습니다.
네. In your memo, you mentioned about the dot-com bubble in its 20th century already. So as you said, it's now this time it's very similar to the dot-com bubble. So
it's similar in some ways, but not others. I mean, it is similar in several ways. In '99 we had the day traders, and in 2020 we had the Reddit bulletin board traders. There are similarities. I think the main similarity is that the 98, 99, 2000 TMT bubble, tech media telecom bubble, was mostly about the internet, and the internet was brand new. Remember, the internet didn't exist for most people before 95 or 96. So it was brand new, and large numbers of companies started up with no profits and no revenues, and they went public, and of course the world treated them as if they were going to be successful. I think this time the greatest strength was shown by companies like Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, and these are not the same kinds of companies. These are established. Here we are, let's say 10 to 25 or 30 years past the establishment of these companies. They're well established, they're strong companies. They're either highly profitable or they could be if they wanted to be, if they wanted to stop investing in growth. And that's a big difference. I mean, if you look at a company like a Microsoft or something like that, there is a point where its stock will go down because it's just become too cheap. When you have a conceptual company with no profits and maybe no sales, that point really doesn't exist. And I think that's a substantial difference.
But like Korean company Coupang, it's really big here, but they have no profit, but the stocks are not doing great, but doing okay. So
high growth tech companies, especially the ones without profits, yes, you should always be careful. The challenge is it's hard to know what being careful consists of. Normally we judge the valuation we should pay on things like PE ratio, but these companies have no E, so it's hard to think about the PE ratio. On the other hand, you know, many of these companies, and I mentioned this in my last answer, many of these companies could be profitable if they wanted to be. It's just that they're fast growing. They want what's called the fast first mover advantage. So they spend a huge percentage of their revenues on future growth. You know, getting new customers and building new capabilities and so forth. So in many cases, the fact that they are not profitable is not as negative as one might think. Now, I don't know anything about Coupang in particular, and so you shouldn't interpret my comments as referring to Coupang. But it's just that, you know, and by the way, of course, the individual investor has a very hard time figuring this out. But in theory, some experts should be able to figure out whether the companies that have no profits are doing it voluntarily or because their business and their business model are not in position to produce profits yet.
So we cannot, you know, skip talking about the cryptocurrency now. Everybody's talking about that. So, and in your memo, you also mentioned cryptocurrency is like a classic example of the new thing. How do you view the future of cryptocurrency?
Well, since you read the memo about something of value, you know that one of the main thrusts of that memo was Andrew's insistence that I don't know enough about crypto to discuss it knowledgeably, and I accept that. And you know, I was immediately skeptical of it because it had no cash flow, and there's nothing physical to it. And it's just like money or art or diamonds. It's all mental. You know, it's attitudes. But I recently made the statement that you know, in the last memo on bull markets, I included the quote from John Kenneth Galbraith, and I said that you know, the people who have a memory of the past and who are tied to the past are dismissed by the young generation as not having the ability to grasp the wonders of the present. And I recently I said that our generation doesn't have the ability to get it, to grasp the potential of crypto or the appeal of crypto. The young generation, it's obvious. One of us is wrong. Which is wrong? It's hard to know which is wrong. And you know, if you look at all the new things, computers, disk drives, internet, SPACs, subprime mortgages, you know, the answer is that these things have to be subjected to the test of time. And, you know, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we'll find out which generation was right. The old generation, which thought it was not serious, or the new generation, which sees vast potential. That's all I can say. There's nothing else for me to say on the subject, and I don't know if anybody can say anything more.
Right, and you think the history of cryptocurrency is now like 12 years. You don't think that's enough time to prove?
Well, it could be. There's no reason it can't be. There's no time limit on these things. But on the other hand, the debate is still going on, right? And of course, crypto has shown incredible volatility. It went from maybe, what was the low in 2020? 3,000? It went from something 3,000 or 4,000. It went to 70,000, and then to 17,000. So the only thing, when we see that kind of performance, the only thing we can say is that the debate is still going on.
And you mentioned a little bit about the Fed already, but you mentioned about like they could avoid. It is very hard to avoid recession. And
Yeah.
how about the inflation itself? Do you think inflation itself could come down somehow?
Sure. Well, look, why do we have inflation now?
The war and the
Well,
demand.
the war is one reason, but that's not the main reason because we had substantial inflation for the last year.
Right.
So I think the big reports, I think the inflation rate went above 4 in April of 21, and the war didn't start for another 10 months. So that's not the reason. There are a number of reasons. The main reasons, in my opinion, are, number one, the central banks, especially the Fed, gave out so much money and people put it in the bank because they couldn't spend it. And then they had a lot of saved up money so that produced unusually high demand.
Right.
Number two, because the economy, the productive aspects of the economy were shut down for so long, when the economy reopened, the production was very spotty, very shaky. And, there are 30,000 parts in a car. What if you can't get 3 of them? No cars. So is it hard to believe that after spending a year in hibernation, the economy didn't start smoothly? No. So we had very strong demand at a time when supply was imperfect. Number three, a lot of people changed jobs, left the workforce, the great resignation. And this added to the imperfect operation of the economy. Number four, the war. And, you took a lot of agricultural production and a lot of energy production out of circulation. Mm-hmm. So, classically, inflation comes from too much money chasing too few goods. And we had a lot of that. Now, the excess demand from federal relief money and the inadequate supply because of the hibernation of the economy, I think these things will correct somewhat. People who left their jobs and stopped working, well, I think a lot of them are going to go back to work because they need to eat. And so maybe even someday the war will end and that production will come back on. I don't know. But the point is, I think it'll get better. And of course, the Fed is fighting it with higher interest rates and with quantitative tightening. So I don't know how much that's going to fix it. I don't know how long it's going to take. Nobody knows these things. Mm-hmm. If you read the commentators, everybody has a different story. So by definition, nobody knows, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
The risk is what we call inflationary expectations. And if people come to believe that there will be inflation, then they will buy to warehouse goods, and that'll cause inflation. It's self-fulfilling. And if inflationary expectations become embedded, then that's very difficult to correct. So I think nobody knows anything about inflation, including me, and certainly nobody knows where this is going. But I think that a year from now, I think it'll be lower than it is today. That's my personal opinion. You should bear in mind that your readers should bear in mind. I don't bet on my own opinions. We're not macro investors. We bet on companies and securities.
Mm-hmm. One is that you, of course, you bought some real estate deal in China recently. It was big deal.
Well, that's another of the things where I wouldn't bet on my own opinion. My own opinion is that China wants to be part of the world, and they're not the same as Putin. They're not going to make it easy, but I think that they're not going to blow things up either. So I think we can get along with China. We have a very good business with China, and it's still continuing, and I think it will continue. And we'll continue to approach it carefully, but I think we'll approach it. And I will say that when I hear people say that that's uninvestable, which is part of what they say about China, that actually gets my interest up, because that tells me that there's no optimism in the prices of the securities.
I see. Many retail investors, like Reddit investors in the US, many retail investors in Korea, they invested for the first time in last 2 years. They're like newcomers. So and they never saw the bear market before. So
Right.
do you have some advice for them? Like they are really panicked and now they don't know what to do, including myself. So
Yes.
do
Well,
you have
look,
some advice?
look, investing is not easy. And, you know, I always say we don't do our own legal work. We don't do our own dental work. We don't do our own medical work. We don't do our own legal work. Most people shouldn't do their own investing. If people who don't know much about investing or business or accounting invest their own money, buy, you know, pick individual stocks to buy, why should they expect to be successful? You know, that I think that most investors should go into funds and let other people invest their money for them. This is a skilled profession, and you can't do it just because you feel like it. If you do it like, oh, that's cool, I'm going to buy that. That's like sport, you know, that's entertainment. And I don't think people should do it on that basis. Now, having done it, if they bought too high because they didn't know the risks they were taking, the worst thing they can do is sell too low because now they think the risk is infinite. So, you know, get control on the situation. If you bought individual stocks and now you regret it, if you want to sell those stocks, don't put the money in the bank, because that would be the equivalent of buying high and selling low. But if you don't want to be in those individual stocks anymore, get out of the stocks and go into funds, so that if the market does recover, you'll participate.
I see. Funds including passive ones. Many people
Yes,
are doing
yes.
like S&P 500 ETF.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Thank you
Okay.
for your time. It was
Thank
a
you.
great
It's a
interview.
pleasure. It's nice to see you. Thank you for your questions.
자, 이렇게 해서 하워드막스 오크트리캐피털 회장의 인터뷰를 2차례에 걸쳐서 들어봤습니다. 준비해 주신 우리 김신영 조선일보 금융팀장에게도 감사를 드립니다.
네, 감사합니다.
그럼 다음 시간에 또 뵙도록 하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
감사합니다.